Hello, welcome to SHADDCAST. I'm your host, Shad Scott. It is May 28th, 2018, and this is episode 33 for Memorial Day. Let's do this. Alright, I got some DeadEye dates coming up. DeadEye is my Grateful Dead tribute band. We just played last night in Houston. It was a really hot show. We're playing the 16th of June at the 1-to-1 bar on South Alcomar. That'll be a 3-set show with a acoustic amuse-bouche at the beginning. So strap in. That's going to be a long, good time, 4-hour show. Exhausting, but definitely worth it. It's a nice slow build to the ecstatic state that we're all hoping to get through a Grateful Dead show. And then we're back at the Cottonwood in Houston on the 22nd. We just got back from Cottonwood Saturday night. And we had Rex Simmons sit in, who I think we met through Lee Braverman, our bass player. He played in like Lee's birthday jam a couple years ago. It's where we first met him, and he's been a really good sub. We've gone through a lot of subs in DeadEye because Trevor Nealon is always touring with Band of Heathens. That's his main squeeze. That's his boo, and that's cool. I love the Band of Heathens, and I've never really, minded having other guests in it. In fact, it's been a lot of fun, and one of the goals of DeadEye was always to involve the whole community playing Grateful Dead music, because I really think you can bring a lot of yourself into this music, and it's, in contrast to the Heartburn band, which was very straight, very robotic almost. That music is a whole nother approach. And I don't know if it's necessarily something that I got long-term fulfillment out of. I was just watching a video from 2016 House of Blues in Houston. And I don't know. I don't think I was quite as happy playing that music as I am this music. Talking Heads music, Chris Franz is their drummer, and he's like a human metronome. I mean, the guy is like a bot. And it's a great challenge to play that music because I personally struggle with being a metronomical drummer. I think I'm good creatively, and like I have a lot of things to say on the drums, but I think that sometimes comes at the expense of just keeping perfect time, which is that I think the more I play drums, the more I want to keep better time and to not distract anybody with a bunch of verbose being too wordy, too wanky. So that's kind of where I am with music. And why I love DeadEye, year after year. This is like our 8th or 9th year, and I'm still getting a lot out of it. And I feel like that's, because of the formula. There's a huge catalog. There's a lot of heart and soul in it, and I can really, there's moments where, in fact, there's huge chunks of the show where you're just improvising and you're making it up as you go, and I love that freedom. And speaking of freedom, today is Memorial Day, and I'd like to thank all the vets that have fought to preserve our freedom here in America. That includes the Afghanistan War, Iraq War, the Vietnam War, Korean War, whichever war you fought in. Thank you. My father was a Green Beret in the U.S. Army and did 2 tours in Vietnam. So that's, I think that's a major well, first of all, it's a major traumatic experience for my father, but I think it's also, something you can hang your hat on. That's a point of pride that a lot of people these days know nothing about. Risking your life for your country. It's a noble and almost forgotten thing, it seems. Like, I don't meet that many soldiers. I know a lot of people because I sell booze and play music on stage, but I don't know that many soldiers. I'm pretty sure that the involvement in the military throughout the last 2 decades has gone down. There's a lot of bad metrics with being in the military. For example, a lot of the suicide and the opioid epidemic is traced back to soldiers returning with PTSD. And they're killing themselves with drugs, with fentanyl and OxyContin and heroin. So it's kind of tragic, and I think we overlook what's going on overseas a lot because it's not in our backyard. But it's time we recognize what we're doing over there. I'm kind of a peacenik. I'm against war. I understand it's kind of a fundamental human thing. There's always going to be people trying to kill other people and preemptively trying to keep that from happening over and over. So there's a lot of aggression up front that I think America has been guilty of, for sure. But I think we're hopefully moving into a more. The stakes are so high. We're moving into a more kind of automated time. I think warfare will be handled by swarms of drones and these bots. You see Boston Dynamics cranking out. What do they call them? Like the Alpha, the upright bot. I can't remember his name. Atlas. And then you have the dogs. Like there's the if you watch Black Mirror. We all saw Metalhead on the last season in Black Mirror, which is one of my favorite shows. And Metalhead basically features a dog that's a bot that can shoot out projectiles which explode and injure you and track you. And then this thing is a relentless hunter that will chase you down and kill you with one of its many. It seems like it has guns at the end of where its paws would be. And because of its robotic nature, the only thing it has working against it is battery life. But, I can just imagine a time where robots are doing a lot more of the dirty work for humans. And even though I'm kind of like, I fantasize and romanticize that, I don't think it'll be good. It'll probably be pretty ugly. We already had that one bot kill a guy. In Dallas, the cop killer, so we're already entering an ethical quagmire with robots killing other humans. Obviously Obama era was crazy drone warfare and thousands of people dead at the hands of basically a gamer flying a machine, a flying death machine. So. It's kind of terrifying, these bots. As beautiful and advanced and elegant as they are, they're also will probably be the downfall of people in America and elsewhere around the world. So I don't know. I'm glad that we're not as militarized as we used to be. And I feel like because of folks like my dad and other soldiers that have been fighting the Al Qaedas and the ISISes and the North Vietnamese, that we've, on some level, we've scared the shit out of the world with our advanced military. I mean, we have like the most terrifying military the world has ever known. It's like it's scarier than Genghis Khan. And I don't know. I feel like dads these days are so much sweeter and nicer than the previous generation. It's like. My dad, harsh disciplinarian, very stern and what's the word? He's definitely a very intense, manly man. You can tell he's like made of wood and he's just tougher than a lot of guys I meet out in the world these days. So I do think we're getting softer as we get comfier, and that's a lot of that's on the sweat and blood of our soldiers. So happy Memorial Day, everybody. Kids out there, if you have a dad who likes to jam with you and play soccer and laugh around with you and watch movies in your jammies together and go out for ice cream, it's I think that's because there's a lot of hardened dads out there that may not have been friends with their kids, but they raised kids that understood that there were consequences and life is serious, and you gotta keep trying to get better and stronger, and maybe not trust so easily, and maybe maybe be a little more disciplined than a lot of these millennials you see these days who don't really understand why you would go to college or mow the front yard or go shopping. Like, all these things can be done for you now. Why should I even get up out of bed? Why should I ever get off my iPhone? I can just hang out here, monitor the entire world, interact with it, and all from the comfort of your home. So it's definitely a whole nother era these days, and all this freedom that I enjoy, I'm sure a chunk of it is due to the service of our infantry and our pilots and our sailors and our generals. So yeah, thanks for that, guys. This podcast is a perfect example of me enjoying my freedoms. I think everybody should have a podcast. If you got something to say, this is basically just celebrating freedom of speech and technology that I can just set up and run my mouth and throw it on YouTube, and it can be seen all over the world. I know there's cats in Japan and India that have seen this, and in China. So it's cool that you can just sit down in front of your computer and run your mouth, and then people can see it instantaneously on the other side of the planet. Now, free speech has always been a double-edged sword for me because I say shit and sometimes it's negative, and then the people will see that, I remember when blogs came out and blogs were really big. I wrote a blog about food and wine, kind of the same thing I do on SHADDCAST, and if I said this winery is making boring wines, somehow they would see that. You'd see who reads your blog, and it'd be like, I'd have like 100 readers tops. So very obscure, and yet, I remember Chateau Roque-Mauriac reaching out just to call them out and being like, "You got to take this blog down. You can't be talking shit on the internet about our winery. We tasted you on all our wines. We're super nice to you, and then you're gonna go back home and pan us on the internet. Pff, go fuck yourself." And I respect that. But, I think you got to respect the internet. And the internet is just a sea of opinions. People just coming out and saying whatever they want. And I'll deal with that backlash. If I said this restaurant was underwhelming or that restaurant was bad, if I had a shitty Blue Star cafeteria experience and wish I went to Luby's instead, sometimes I'm going to be throwing shade. And that's part of, the quagmire of this medium. So it'll probably bite me in the ass, and I'll have to shut it down. Somebody that I respect and fear is going to tell me to shut this thing down, and I dread that day because it's sure is fun just saying whatever the hell you want. And anyway, so yeah, speaking of freedom, playing Grateful Dead music has always been a fun pastime for me. I've done it for many years. The Dead I was kind of indoctrinated by one of my first bands in high school, Family Dog, and that was Trip Allen. Shout out to Trip, who's coming here next week, or this week. I think he'll be here probably in a couple days. So I'm excited to see that guy. He turned me on to the Dead, and it's great. Hopefully get him on the podcast. He's a great friend. He's been out there on the left-hand coast fighting the the marijuana front, the war more freedom-related issues here. The fact that pot is illegal, and I think it's safer than alcohol, has been a point of contention for me and a bunch of my friends, because I really think it's an important substance that could actually make the planet better if it had more wide adoption. So Tripp's over there fighting the good fight on the green line. So hopefully we can get him on the podcast. That'd be cool. He introduced me to the Dead, and we played Cottonwood, that bar in Houston. We've been playing for 5 or 6 years, and we brought Rex down there. Rex Simmons is a groovy keyboard player. It's funny. He wears shorts and a flat brim hat, but I'm not going to hold that over his head. And he's really a jazzy, creative keyboardist. And one of the many keyboardists that sat in with DeadEye and really brought a lot to the music. I actually got and saw some music recently, which was it's exciting. I've been I've been sick for a week or two and low energy and just not really feeling like going out. And there's not been that much that I haven't seen that's come around. I did miss Toots and the Maytals, which is my biggest regret of 2018. He was playing in San Antonio, started at 7:30. I get out of work at 6 and get home at 6:30, 6:45. And I just, it's an hour and hour and a half away. And I just didn't think I could make it. I love Toots and the Maytals so much. And, man, it still hurts. There's pain in my heart for missing that show. So, but I caught Galactic. They used to be called Galactic Prophylactic back in the 90s when I first met them or discovered them, whatever. I got a fish tape. We used to collect tapes, cassette tapes, and I'd collect Dead and fish tapes, and every now and then there would be a filler at the end of the show, and the filler would sometimes be Fish or Dead, sometimes it would be other bands. And one of those times it was Galactic, and I heard this funky New Orleans music, and I was like, oh my God, I got to see this band. That was probably 1997 or 8. And I got to catch them. My first show was as I was leaving college in San Diego. There was a mountain air festival going on in the mountains, the Sierra Nevada mountains, and we got to see Phil and Friends. And that was a cool Phil and Friends. There was like Donna Jean and Warren Haynes and I think John Molo and Mickey Hart and Merle Saunders and superstar lineup. Steve Kimmock, I believe, was the other guitar player. So that was really a special night because they played like Allman Brothers and Fish and Dead, and it was kind of a grab bag. And my first time to see Donna Jean. First time to see Phil, too, come to think of it. And then afterwards, Galactic played this shed down the hill. So we're in the foothills of the mountains, and down the hill was a like a long hall, like a metal like barracks. And all along the walls were the most psychedelic visuals you've ever imagined. I mean, there's this kind of console, this battle station in the middle with all these technicians just blasting trippy shit all over the walls. So it was really the most psychedelic show I've ever been to, and we were kind of enhanced, so it was well received. And we watched them play from midnight to 4 a.m. They took one 45-minute break. They were like, we're going to take a 5-minute break. We'll see you in about half an hour. And that was when they had Houseman on the lead vocals. Thérèse Declouet, or Thérèse Declouet. This sounds French, but he probably pronounces it Thérèse Declouet. I miss that guy. He was wearing like a robe, and he was singing tunes like Century City and Thrill and Something Wrong with This Picture and all these funky tunes that I think of as like canon Galactic. They don't do that anymore. Now they have a female lead singer named Erica Falls, and they added this other dude on trumpet. And he also does some like kind of hip-hop-y, let me hear you say yeah, let me hear you say party. party. I hate that shit. Like I don't go to concerts to be told what to say or to wave my hands in the air. Like I just don't care. So I don't enjoy that edition, but I do enjoy Erica Falls. She is has all this charisma, and her voice is amazing. Her range is amazing. She's just got silky brown butter voice and just all this sass and style. And, you know, her lyrics are just good old fashioned, like kind of Sharon Jones and the Dap Kings, you know, R&B groovy shit. So she brought a lot to the stage. And then the regular lineup of Jeff Rains on guitar, Rob Mercury on bass, Stanton Moore, who's like the god of drums, and then Ben Elman and Rich Vogel on keys, and then the two newbies. Anyway, I've been seeing them every year for so long. It was probably my 30th Galactic show, and man, they're just always so solid and good. It's really, really exciting band to go see if you want to dance and just shake it out. Yesterday was my 11th anniversary. To Malia, I've been with her for 16 years, but we've been married for 11. Not the easiest endeavor ever, but definitely rewarding. You know, some years I didn't know if we'd make it through or not, because being married is, you know, it's not easy. It can be a struggle, and it's certainly one of the hardest things I got going on in my life, just because we're very independent and stubborn and hard-headed and all that. So, you know, all the respect in the world to my lovely wife for putting up with me all these years, and I'm glad we've made it work. So we went to Jeffrey's last night. I'll talk about that in the restaurant review section of this podcast, which is towards the end. But I also saw Solo, the new Star Wars movie. That was really good. Surprising. I've kind of been hating on these Star Wars movies. Rogue One was probably the best they've done since, you know, the reboot. Back in the 90s, they started remaking the movies, and then they came out with the prequels, which I pretty much hated. And then, Force Awakens and Return of the Jedi, I did not like. Rogue One was pretty cool because everyone died. It was real dark. But this one was about Han Solo, who I think is a really enjoyable character. And, you know, Han and Indiana Jones were two Harrison Ford characters that definitely made a lasting impression on me. You know, that kind of one of these sarcastic action heroes that, you know, I think a lot of boys my age wanted to be just like when we grew up. So, Harrison Ford wasn't in it. I'm glad they didn't, you know, drag him back into these movies. I think looks kind of old and brittle these days. I don't think this is Han Solo's like origin story, and it was great. You know, he's always kind of smiling. He's always in trouble, and he's always, you know, using his spaceship to get out of some scrape. And you know, he's buddies with Chewbacca, the Wookiee, who as a dog guy, I always feel like, you know, like Bubbles is my Chewbacca, or Belle. She was. You know, that bitch was the latest addition to my family, and she's pretty awesome. And the older she gets, she kind of becomes less intense and just really turn into a snuggle bug and a sweetheart. But there was these monsters in Solo that looked just like Belle. It was hilarious. Johnny Livesey, who was on this podcast, shout out to Johnny, bought me some tickets. And he's definitely the biggest Star Wars fan I know, and he's kind of one of these... they can do no wrong, you know, anything. The cartoons, the video games, the books, you know, all the kind of the whole Star Wars universe. He celebrates the whole catalog, so it's fun going with him because you know he's gonna love it no matter what. And that's the kind of guy you want to go see a movie with a super fan. So yeah, I thought the production was really good, and I thought the acting was good. and I thought that the action was cooking along really nice, like a nice tempo. So check it out. Go see that movie. I'm sure a lot of you are burned out on Star Wars and could give a shit what goes on in that universe, but this was fun. I'll probably see it again. I might wait for Netflix, but yeah, I'll see it again. So restaurants. Let's talk about some restaurants I've gone to in the last week. One I forgot from last podcast was called Garbo's. And ever since Malia and I visited the New England, we went through like Boston up to Maine, eating all the shellfish. I talk about shellfish a lot on this podcast. It's a huge part of my diet. Like lobsters and crabs and shrimps are, I love them to pieces. This is one of my favorite foods. And when you're not eating animals, then I find that shellfish will do the trick. And even though I've been sneaking animals back into my diet as I kind of slowly embrace carnivorism again, I'm still like a shellfish maniac. Pescatarian, I believe they call it. So I went to Garbo's for lunch, and it was like straight out of New Hampshire or Maine. Exact same vibe, exact same menu. All these like lighthouses on the wall and bright, a lot of white and kind of just light brown. Yeah, just a sunny, breezy spot. Sweet people working there. Garbo's is kind of tucked in a weird North Austin neighborhood, tucked away. It's like house, restaurant, house. It's, if you didn't have Google, you'd never just stumble upon this place unless you lived in the neighborhood. So anyway, I went and had a lobster roll there. It was really good. Really good. I mean, legit. So I recommend Garbo's for sure. Another shellfish experience was Alcomar. Alcomar is like a Mariscos place. I think I've talked about it on the podcast before, but we keep going back. We used to be more like El Alma for fancy Mexican. At first it was La Condesa, and then it was El Alma, and now it's pretty much Alcomar because they do the seafood right. They had like lobster tacos and lobster enchiladas. Yes, lobsters. Lobsters were at once upon a time a cheap, kind of like longshoreman food, and now they're kind of elitist fancy food. Like, I don't know, I don't get it. They're the cockroaches of the sea, and they're delicious. They're easier to eat than crabs, but they have a similar flavor profile. A little butterier, a little cleaner, less salty, I think, than say a Dungeness crab or a snow crab. But yeah, man, the fact that you can get lobster stuffed in a chili relleno or lobster enchiladas or just one lobster enchilada you can tack on to whatever else you get. They got good salads. Alcomar is legit. I just drink margaritas and eat lobster Mexican food. I don't even know if they eat lobsters in Mexico, and I don't care. That's what we eat at Alcomar, and it is good. Went to Thai Fresh, had some pad Thai and some Cremant de Limoux rosé. That place is solid, definitely like hipster service, but they're sweet, and sometimes they're really timely. And the wine list is really thoughtful and old world. So if you're in South Austin, jonesing for Thai Fresh is your joint. There's also Sway and Elizabeth Street, and Crua is reopening. Crua has that crabby rice, that fried rice with crab that I think about it all the time. And they are reopening, which I'm excited about. There was a new sushi joint I went to called Hanabi. Now, this place has been called Sushi Saki. It's been called like Hanu Sushi or Haru. Now, yeah, it's just one of these kind of turnover restaurants that no one pays a lot of attention to. It's next to a very busy Whole Foods up north, like 183 highway and Mopac area. So yeah, Hanabi, I just got the nigiri, and it, you get big old chunks of fish, which I really enjoyed. Like the servings are pretty large. It's expensive, but sushi kind of typically is. I got some snow crab and hamachi and some tuna and just big old pieces with like spicy, like jalapeno chunks on top. Definitely not the best sushi I've had. I don't think it's on the level of Tomo or Uchi or Uchiko. But it was good. It was good. It was I definitely left full, which is rare for a sushi joint. But I just like, personally, my only criticism would be, when you watch like Jiro Dreams of Sushi, or when you go to sit at the sushi bar at Uchiko, and they kind of like paint some sauce or soy-based sauce on each piece of fish. I love that. It's like a pre-dressing, so you don't have to mess with soy sauce and all the ginger and everything. Like, they just seem to find some kind of goop to rub over your fish that takes care of the seasoning. So that would be the only thing that separates this place from better sushi places is just the fish has a little more going on, one extra step of preparation. But sushi's raw fish, it's kind of all tastes the same, and it's good. I went back to the fairground. The fairground at 111 is, I think, Congress and Cesar Chavez downtown. It's underground, and there's 5 or 6 vendors down there. Like Easy Tiger does the booze. There's Antonelli's. Immer and Rye does Henbit, Contigo, Kome, and Daidui. Daidui is doing tacos. Henbit's doing bowls. Contigo's doing like rotisserie chicken and the great veggie burgers. My favorite veggie burger right now in town is at Contigo. And then Antonelli's does cheese. Like, they're cheese experts, cheesemongers. They're like the highest expression of cheese in town. Although Pizzeria does a great job. That's an underappreciated cheese department at a Pizzeria. Shout out Sarah McIntosh. But yeah, John Antonelli and Sarah are the cheese badasses right now. I might be forgetting somebody, but Central Market has a nice cheese department. But cheese game strong, and they do mac and cheese there. I was hanging out with some friends that have kids, and they're just saying how much these kids just want to have mac and cheese every day. And I'm kind of the same way. Like, I got this toddler palate that's like, yeah, I would eat mac and cheese every day. Like, I love ramen, I love spaghetti, I love carbonara, I love linguine, fettuccine alfredo, like, all that shit. That's my favorite food. It's like the definition of comfort food. Like baked potatoes, and with the like loaded baked potatoes, I'd put in there. Like cheese enchiladas. I could eat this shit every night. I don't. Yeah, breakfast tacos are definitely a comfort food for me. But anyway, the Antonelli's mac and cheese has asserted its dominance over, like, in the podium of my mind, like the winner's circle of mac and cheese. 24 Diner was definitely sitting pretty on the top, but dethroned by Antonelli's. And I can't say I'm that surprised. They put breadcrumbs on top. They got these like long spirals, not fusillis, I don't know the name, but yeah, big spirals, big loose curls, and just a complex cheese blend, cooked perfectly. And they have 2 different sizes, so I got the small. But I also got I went to Henbit and got the shrimp lemongrass bowl, and that was really tasty and complex, and they're very artsy with their food. I think the presentation is always an important thing with with Kevin and Tavel and all those cats at Immer and Rye and Henbit. Very impressive cuisine. Those cats are doing it right, and I think they're getting a lot of due credit for their work. So now I just got to go to Daidui down there, and I will have gone to all the restaurants at the fairground. But if you haven't been yet, go for dinner. They seem dead as fried chicken during dinner, so obviously lunch makes a lot of sense because everyone's downtown. But yeah, go for dinner. You'll probably be in and out of there, no problem. No crowds, no lines. But anyway, I want to talk about Jeffrey's. It's kind of like the fine dining establishment of Austin. Guild was very impressive. Fine dining. I hope they make it. But Jeffrey's has hung in there for, I don't know, 20 years now. When I first moved here, I was like, okay, well, there's your fine dining place. And it's kind of that French-American fusion where you can tell they studied their French, the Eric Repairs and the Julia Childs and the classic techniques, but they just kind of also make what you want to eat. Like they know what Americans eat, and it's not necessarily treat Meunier and aspic. So I think they make it a little more accessible, but it's still got all that depth of flavor and highly skilled. Kind of the craft of cooking is there, and there's a lot of invention. June Rodill, shout out to June. She does the wine list there. She recently got promoted to a GM position or some upper management position at McGuire Mormon Group. But their food is expensive, but it's worth it. Like I never regret going to any one of those establishments. Highest level of service, highest level of quality. The wine lists are always amazing. I always leave with this kind of buttery, garlicky flavor in my mouth, and the wine, like, had some Lignée Michelot Morey Saint-Denis 2015, and it was, ethereal. Like, this is one of the best wineries I've ever visited as far as, maybe not looks, but as far as flavor goes, and as far as having, like, leaving tears on the table of the tasting room. Like Lignée Michelot is one of those places. My quick story. One of my first wine trips, we went to France and did the whole country. Exhausted from doing 4 or 5 wineries a day and long dinners and long lunches. Not a lot of sleep. A lot of travel. And we showed up to this guy, this handsome guy with a couple kids running around and a dog, and we're drinking Gevrey Chambertin, or tasting Gevrey Chambertin and Morey Saint-Denis and like Von Romanet maybe, but maybe it was just Gevrey and Morey. Anyway, I was just like, my notes turned to like kind of bedroom talk, like you dirty whore, how dare you be so seductive? It's like these aromas were very sexual and like mushrooms and earth and fudge, like all these deep, dark, seductive aromas, and the flavors just pretty, like dark blue and black fruits and long finish, silky mouthfeel. Just I was like, this is this is why people love wine so much. I was like, this is one of the highest expressions. I think it was his 07 Clos de la Roche that we were trying, that I was just like, like crying. I was crying when I met you. Anyway, I love Jeffrey's, and I was stoked to see Lignée Michelot on the list. And they made like Caesar salad out of little gem lettuce, which is God's gift to lettuce, and they put like actual slivers of anchovies, like chunks of anchovies on there. Which I don't eat enough of those small, salty, oily fish, but I think those are the best for you nutritionally speaking for seafood. I think those little salty fish and oily fish are what you should be eating if you're in the pescatarian thing for health. So yeah, just bravo Jeffrey's. Every time I go for a special night, and it's always just as good as restaurants get. And yeah, hats off to Jeffrey's. Thanks for being the fine dining establishment and a place where you can get dressed up and make your lady feel like a queen. So, very impressed. I got a list of some wines I had. I've had I think there's only 1 week that's elapsed between now and the last podcast, but I've had some high percentage of amazing wines, a lot of volume. I don't know if I've been drinking too much, but my wine game was strong this week. I had I think I bought some wine through my company, and because I get to pay wholesale prices. It's kind of one of the perks of being in my industry. So I got to buy a bunch of shit I've been eyeing in the warehouse for a while. And then also some suppliers just gave us some wine. We had a Greek seminar, where we got to learn about wine. And, I had a kind of a wine get-together with some wine friends. And, before you know it, I just had some killer juice. We'll start with champagne. Vazar Kokar, Blanc de Blanc. I believe it was 2011. We had the Guild. I didn't talk about it, but it was a really sharp laser beam, very fresh, very flinty champagne. All Chardonnay, and just focused and brilliant with shellfish. I think we had oysters, and that's a killer pairing. Another champagne we had was Roger Coulon, which I thought was it was like a non-vintage Brut. Premier Cru Village, and that was like a very round, brioche, toasty, yeasty, classic champagne. Tastes exactly like what I expect champagne to taste like. Had some Philippinat Brut Rosé, which was nice and clean, not too fruity, not too sweet. Nice, still a tooth cracker, good acidity. That was fun. We were celebrating one of my friends getting a new job in the wine biz. So that's exciting for her. We had aforementioned Greek seminar with Ted Diamantes, who is a Grateful Dead fan, and I've sold his wine throughout the years. Hadn't seen him in probably 7 or 8 years, and it was great to kind of catch up with him. He's been in the business forever. He's done every job in the wine world, and now he pretty much educates and imports Greek wines. Greece is one of the few countries I have not been to that produces wine. I'd throw them in a tiny handful of countries like Croatia, Georgia. There's a few places I've been that make the Vitis vinifera. So a couple of standouts there were the George Skouras, who's kind of a superstar, does a wild yeast Mavro Filero, and he also does Moscow Fileros. Those are nice, salty, kind of peachy, stone fruity wines that are great with shellfish and seafood. I think that's what Greek does the best, is those salty, acidic whites. So if you want to start trying Greek wines, I would start there with the Moscows and the what's the other? Assyrtiko. Yeah, Santorini Assyrtiko was a highlight of that tasting. And it's kind of like a Chablis, maybe not quite as charming or deep as Chablis, but same qualities that'll get you through a dozen oysters. A really good red we had was Zeno Mavro from Kiriani. They have a Ramnista vineyard that was super silky, kind of like a Nebbiolo or Dolcetto, but soft, pretty earthy, nice fruit. That was a fun wine. Speaking of Chablis, I had some Guy Robin 09 Chablis Premier or Grand Cru Valmure vineyard. Or Valmure, I think Valmure is a village. It's not a vineyard. Yeah. So anyway, it's cool to see Chablis with some age. It loses some of that nervy acidity and just kind of mellows out and becomes very pretty and a little more like a white Burgundy that you're used to. A little less electricity, I would say. We had some at that wine tasting with friends in the garage. Was I brought the Guiberteau Les Moulins Saumur Blanc 2015. And that's like the Samura Blancs have a tiny bit of wax, but mainly just like clean, fresh, like limestone juice. It's like mineral, great acidity, and it just tastes like if you threw a limestone into a juicer, like squeeze a little lime in there. Classic wine. I could drink Guibertot every day. One of my favorite producers for sure. We've had a couple late night wine drinkings. Last night was Frederic Mignon Bourgogne Rouge, which was all right. Nothing to write home about, but drinking Burgundy is definitely one of my favorite things to do. And this was no slouch, but when you're comparing it to Lignée Michelot, it's not all Burgundies are created equal. I had a new Riesling, Gunther Steinmetz, Bromberg Hofer Riesling Cabernet. Amazing. I thought I was kind of like a jaded Riesling guy after selling Terry Thies wines for so long, but there's apparently still, I've had my first tasting ever was the Valkenburg portfolio, and that was like, I don't know, 13 years ago, and I was like, oh shit, Riesling is the jam. I could drink Riesling all the time. Like, it's just so fun. I can't think of a more fun wine to drink than Riesling. It's a discovery and an explosion of flavor, and sometimes you can forget about one. Like, we dug up a 1989 Spätlese at my dad's house, and it was amazing. So Riesling will just hang out as long as you want. Whenever you're ready to party, it'll be there for you. It'll be fun. Everyone will get off on it. I don't think you need to be a wine expert to enjoy it, but it doesn't hurt. It definitely tells you about where it's from in the same way that Chablis and Burgundy do, and that's really the kind of wine I like. It's a wine that tells you about where it's from. It's got a story to tell. It's got that French concept of terroir. So yeah, those are some of the highlights. I also had a bunch of spirits I tasted through. We sell Willet family whiskeys at my company, and I got to taste through those, and very impressive. Some definite surprises. Like, I thought the Willet stuff in the pot still bottle, like it's this kind of bottle, it looks like a plunger. But that was so hot and spicy. I was just like, Jesus, I had to back up off it. It was a little much. Like, I really didn't enjoy it. And I was expecting that to be so good, because I've respected Willet a long time. I've had Willet bottlings that, but it turns out I had Willet Reserve or whatever, the family reserve, single barrel. That was what I remember, and that's why Willet's a big deal. Now, the pot still bottles are cool, but I didn't think the whiskey was for me at all. It was just real intense, and just kind of kicked me in the face. But they have these second bottlings, Noah's Mill and Rowan's Creek, and those were a lot more to my liking, like a little rounder, softer, more honeyed. Not sweet, but definitely like the classic bourbon I remember drinking when I was younger, and like in college and shit. Bourbon was our go-to spirit before I discovered Islay Scotch and kind of became a zealot. So anyway, those are some. Willet Rye, which was also pretty good. It's kind of got that spicy pumpernickel pepper thing. But I bought some clear spirits for the house. The Charbet 02 first batch vodka, I believe it's called. Comes in a liter, fresh, clean Napa Valley vodka. I don't know what they make it out of. I would guess wine, because they make wine at Charbet too. Like, I went there one day, real hungover. It's on top of Spring Mountain. I was there with my old company, and we had this really in-depth kind of tasting and tour of Charbet, and they make some incredible whiskeys. As the base, they use Racer 5 or Big Bear Black from what's that brewery? Bear Republic in Healdsburg. So they're starting with super hoppy, like super heady California beers and distilling them and making really exciting spirits, like the R5 whiskey, which is a hopped whiskey that comes from Racer 5, and then they have their, I can't remember the name of the Big Bear Black. It's like B5 or something, B2, I can't remember. But one of the best whiskeys I've had from America, hands down. So that I got their vodka and just been mixing it with some citrus and bubbles and making delicious cocktails that you don't even know you're drinking booze. You know, it's just so clean. I think that's the best thing vodka can do, is just get out of the way of whatever you're flavoring it with. And then Kenobi Gin. It always makes me think of Star Wars. Kenobi, and it also reminds me, now that I've been to Kyoto, it's got this very aromatic, exotic umami thing going on that's reminds me exactly of Kyoto. Like when we were walking through the bamboo forest, it was just the cleanest, freshest smell with all these flowers, and aromatically it's heaven. And they found a way to put that in a bottle and call it Kenobi Gin. So if you ever see that shit out there, drink it. But yeah, I think this podcast, I'm starting to ramble on a bit too long. Thanks for hanging with me. I'll wrap it up. And I think the next podcast will be hopefully with Trip Allen. And then we got Dustin Bozarth lined up in a couple weeks. So I'm trying to do some more of these interview style podcasts. So I appreciate you listening, and have a great Memorial Day.